Thank you so much for being here. My name is Alli. I'm the VP of Program at Book Trust. Book Trust is a national early literacy nonprofit working to spark joyful reading experiences for kids across the country. So last week, we were really excited to share our vision to reach 5 million kids by 2040. And motivation really is at the center of how we get there. And so, just briefly, here's a little bit of the reality that we're working against. Kids are spending less time with books than previous generations did, and that time really matters. When a kid doesn't get to develop a real relationship with reading, it's much harder to build later. And so that's really what today is about. Not reading necessarily as a skill to master, but reading as something a kid actually wants to do and what it takes to get there. So I'm joined by two fabulous people who live this every day. Orianna Bowe is a parent of three, amazing, in Wisconsin. Two of her sons are current Book Trust students, and Camilo Cervantes is a fourth and fifth grade ELA teacher at Monroe Elementary in Denver, and Book Trust 2025 Teacher of the Year runner-up, who was recognized last year for using literacy to build those real connections between students, families, and communities. I'm so glad that you both are here. So before we get into the first question, I just want to frame something for, our folks watching from home. When we talk about reading motivation, we're not necessarily talking about a test score or a reading level. We're really talking about whether a child has that inner voice that says, I want to read this. This impulse that's so hard to manufacture. And once it's there, it really does change everything. And if we don't protect it early, like I said, it does not come back easy. So Oriana, I want to start with you. The hot question. Just tell us a little bit about your kids' relationship with reading. Like, what has the journey looked like for your family?
Okay, so our oldest is 9, and it has been a massive challenge through his entire life with books. So as like a little baby, I had experience babysitting, so dealing with little kids, and it was always like book after book after book with them. They wanted to read. With my oldest, he was little, and he actually would push books away. He would like slap our faces and yell no, and he just never connected with books the way that I saw other kids connect with it. So I felt like it was a struggle right from the beginning. So we worked with him, trying to get him to like books, to be able to then translate into reading when he got to the right age. And it has been a struggle literally ever since. So he's now in third grade, and we've gone through it all. We've gone through um, like how is he going to be able to read? How is he going to be able to transition into keeping up with kids? And then just recently we learned that he's actually dyslexic. So we're getting the help that he needs, but in order for us to get to this point, we've had to try a bunch of different things. And for him, what really has connected is audiobooks. So he's extremely intelligent, loves to learn, and I felt like we bridged that gap really well with audiobooks. So we were able to bring in the auditory aspect of it and then slowly start transitioning into more picture heavy books. So, like Captain Underpants books, where it's a little bit more engaging to be able to kind of, like bring that back in. So that's kind of our journey with our oldest. Our middle loves books. Haven't had any problems. So it's been easy, baby, easy. She loves books. I think more than our second. So
Can I
that's a
ask?
little bit in the nutshell of our journey. So it's been a struggle, but yeah.
That's so interesting. I want to ask you more, maybe a little bit later, about what the audiobook experience looks like for you.
Yeah.
For your middle, what's the hot book? What are we into right now?
Spider-Man. Like he also really likes Pick Your Own Journey.
Oh,
So there's
cool.
like these Danny, like I think they're called like Danny something books, and he loves those. So it's like, Danny didn't get what he wanted. Like, does he throw a fit? Or like go to this page? Or does he just like let it go to this page? And so he'll like open up the books and be like, "Today I choose to be bad." It's like he'll pick like all the bad things, and then the next day he'll open up and be like, "Nah, we're gonna make good choices today." And so
Hey, listen,
it's kind of
student
a
agency can show up in a lot of different ways.
yes.
That's awesome. All right, turning now to our teacher in residence here. You've been teaching for 15 years. That's right.
Yeah, that's right.
Uh,
Yeah.
that's amazing.
Mhm.
First of all, just commend you on that experience alone. And so I'm curious, in that time, from your classroom experience at the beginning to today, how has your thinking about motivation changed over that time? Has it? And is there anything that you would go back in time and tell your younger teacher self that you wish that you had known earlier?
Okay. Before to answer the question, I want to say thank you so much for inviting me to this conversation about reading motivation. Um, I want to start connecting my answer with some ideas that Oriana was mentioning. So she mentioned something about heroes, right? Spider-Man and all these topics. So that's something that I believe as a teacher. I mean, the first thing that a teacher should do in a class is to help the class to build the reading motivation. Um, it's not only to learn how to read, it's also to make the class become readers. Another thing that I think she said is very, very powerful is go step by step and increase the difficulty of the reading. So it's like a progress that you have to do. I compare reading with running. You don't run 5 or 10 miles the first day. So you have to go slowly. You have to go slowly in this process of reading. Um, there are three things that I consider are the most powerful things that you have to do to encourage your students to read. The first one is to be a reading role model. If the kids, if your students don't see you reading and follow your own structures, it will be hard for them to feel motivated to read. Another great thing that a teacher should do is to offer scaffolding and make sure that those kids who need to reinforce the foundational skills have an opportunity in the class to improve those skills. Because if they don't do it, that is uh, a thing that could create frustration in the classroom. And finally, I think it's important that the teachers make sure that the classroom is a good environment to read, with good spaces, with a quiet environment or atmosphere, and with beautiful illustrations and a lot of books that they can read about different topics and with a lot of reading levels.
That's so cool. We talk a lot at Book Trust about creating the conditions, which you can take literally as the physical space that you're in, or figuratively in terms of, the tone or expectations that you're setting for kids. I think one thing I loved hearing about your work, and I'm hoping you can share more, Camilo, is you've created activities like Lectura Fria and Lectura Caliente.
Yes.
Did I capture that right? And bringing like art and performance. So when we're talking about conditions creation, um, what are you actually trying to unlock in kids with those approaches? What's your goal?
Well, my main goal with a lectura
And if
caliente
you
and
could explain it too, that would be great. What is that?
lectura fría and lectura caliente, that means cold reading and hot reading. So what I do is to offer my students an opportunity to improve their reading skills in a conversational activity. So the first thing that they have to do is that they're going to have like a passage to read, and the teacher encourages the student to have the first reading exercise by themselves. So they just start reading, and the teacher pays attention about how this student is reading. And after that, we have like a conversation to see the good things that we did, the things that we can improve. We can talk about what the text is about, what words were a little hard to understand, which words were the most interesting words of the text. So we have different questions to answer in that conversation that I have with my students. And after that, after all that feedback, and after creating that connection with the student, I invite my student to read for a second time. And this second time is called lectura caliente. So basically means like after having feedback and after being motivated and supported by the teacher, we can do it now better, and we can improve skills like reading comprehension, decoding, how we can create a gist of the text. So we explore different skills. It depends on the learning goals that we have at the moment. And we do all that with a tracker. So throughout the time, we can see the progress. We can see the progress of the student. And at the same time, I'm building the student's motivation, because the student is developing those foundational skills or those reading skills that they need to develop to feel better, to feel more confident to read by themselves. Mm-hmm.
That's so cool. I love the framing of the hot and the cold reading and what that actually means in practice. Going back to you, Ariana, the when you think about what's like actually worked, I'm hearing a lot of consistency in what both you and Camilo are saying around scaffolding. I mean, you're scaffolding as a parent because you're starting at a place where your kid can actually get their foot in the door and start to really make a connection, and that sounds like audiobooks. And so when you think about what's actually worked, whether it's the audiobooks or, reading together or just finding the right Spider-Man book, what is like an actual good reading moment at home look and feel like for you and your family?
I think the biggest thing is consistency with us.
Hmm.
We give them, so we have a Yo2 player, which I think
Oh, cool.
Yoto,
Yeah.
I think is we call it Yo2, but we got that for Christmas one year, and it wasn't something that my son asked for. It was something
Mm.
that we just did research on. I felt like it was a good opportunity. I mean, we're not going to give him a cell phone to be able to listen to audiobooks, right? So we needed some way to be able to do that. And so there's little cards, if you're not familiar with it, that you put into the player. There's a little screen, but it doesn't have any other screen interactions with it. And you can buy books through their service, or you can literally just do your own. So if you have audiobooks, or even you reading it to your child, right? Like you can record that and put it on one of the cards. So every single night, it just kind of became habit. It was like, you can stay up as late as you want as long as you just have this. Like, and it just kind of turned into every single night they have to have it. It's like if we go somewhere else, it comes with us. So it's like at grandma's house, they listen to it every night. If they don't, they'll throw a fit kind of thing. But yeah, so it's like picking every night they get to pick a book, they play it. If it's something that it's a chapter book, maybe they picked up where they were before, but just continuing to like create consistency over and over has been really helpful. And then being able to, like bridge that gap with my oldest. So it's like he listened to the Boxcar Children, which I guarantee that he would have never, ever even given that a shot if it wasn't with an audiobook. And so to be able to just be like, when we go to a library for him to go, I'm like, you listen to this one. Like you read this one. And so for him to like make that connection and then to be able to like be like, oh, well, this book's kind of like this one. Let's maybe try that one. Like, so in my eyes, yes, like he's not physically picking up a book and reading through it, but he's still getting all of the core things, right? He's building that relationship with books. He's understanding certain things that he really likes, being able to kind of like transfer over and just kind of bounce off of that. So,
My elder millennial heart is singing because of the Boxcar Children reference. I'm so psyched. And now I'm motivated to pick that book back up myself because wow. That's really neat. And I need to check out this Yoto player as a parent of a 4-year-old. So thank you for
yes,
sharing that
I
little
highly
tidbit.
recommend it.
And so, Camilo, it seems like there's this tension, right, in the education space of that educators have between just getting kids books that they want to read. I mean, you were talking earlier about having a really robust library and making sure kids have a lot of options and levels of difficulty. Um, so making sure kids have books that they want to read, but also there are going to be texts and passages that they have to read as part of the curriculum. How have you navigated that? Like, does one have to win? Is there an enemy here? Tell me more about how you find the balance of making sure kids have stuff they want to read and getting them to read the stuff that they have to.
Okay, so this is how I see it. We have to look for a balance between the reading goals that we have for the class and all the data that we analyzed, the assessments that the kids have to do. After analyzing all that information, so we set some reading goals, right? But on the other side, we're building reading motivation and we're making the class become readers. So you have to look for a balance between those things. On this side, about the reading goals that they have, it's important to have conversations with the kids, let the kids know the reading levels that they have, make sure that they know the structures, the instructions that they need to follow to find books really aligned with their reading levels, where they can find resources to feel supported. But when a child wants to read a book that doesn't belong to his reading level, it's also very important to offer the opportunity, the space, the time for that student to read what he wants to read. And this is how I think it could be addressed. So if the child decides to choose a book that is maybe a very low reading level that doesn't align with his level, we can offer like activities, opportunities to report what he read using like maybe more academic words related to his reading level. We also can offer more like uh, step sentences to report what he read, giving the child conversations, opportunities to have conversations with the student, with other students and the teacher to communicate what he read, but with a, with a higher expectation that is aligned to the reading level. So it's like you are like giving the opportunity to read, and at the same time giving the opportunity to use all that content according to his reading level. And if the case is the opposite, a child who wants to check a book that has a very high level, so the things that you can do is to support the child, give the child scaffolding, giving him summaries, some words that could be aligned with the things that the child is reading in the book, but you are not like uh, losing the opportunity to make the child feel motivated to read, motivated to explore. So everything is like looking for a balance, between both things. But always, always, always remember that you want your child to become a reader. Mhm.
Yeah,
I actually could I can actually piggyback off of this a little bit.
Mhm.
go
Um,
for it.
so for the classroom for my third grader, I talk more about him because we're the it's where we are with our reading focus. But um in their classroom right now, I was very worried about the aspect of his reading level is so much lower than his other classmates. And so when we went in for parent-teacher conferences, I kind of like brought that up because I don't want him to feel left out in certain situations when the other kids are reading like up here and he's down here. And so my son kind of talked about it, but then the teacher talked a little bit more about it. They've got a free time every day. And I think it's about like 15 to 30 minutes where they can choose how they want to read. And so they get to choose the book that they would like to read that's either a physical book from the library or a book that's in the classroom or on their tablets. And so my son actually gravitates towards the tablet, and it's all of the books that the library currently has, so I don't remember what the app is, but they have all the books and it reads them to them. So like he can check out any of the same books from the library, the school library, that is on to his like little tablet, and then it actually reads it to him. So he can listen and he can see the words and it'll highlight them as he's going across. And so each of the kids can choose the things that they're interested in, that maybe is at the level that they're at. So I felt like that was really interesting to know that, like, at least like in our classroom, that they were taking in consideration kids that were maybe interested in other things or maybe a little bit lower level.
Yeah, I think it's very important to implement accommodations for the students. Based on my experience, and based on the things that you said before, consistency is the most important thing in reading, in my opinion, because at some point, all the students will show progress. So as long as the teacher offers scaffolding, accommodations, small groups, so the progress will be like, in motion. And at some point, that student that you were supporting shows progress in reading. Mhm.
It's such an interesting conversation about like how do we ensure that we're meeting our kids where they're at while getting them to the next place where they can build more reps, get more of that muscle, that stamina, and being able to open up a door to a whole new universe of content that they might not have otherwise experienced without leveling up. Um, and so I'm curious, you know, Camilo, it sounds like you may have already answered this a little bit, but I would love to hear maybe a little bit more detail. Kid hits a wall, right? Let's say it's a period after lunch. The kid is tired. We're reading. The book is hard. They're not feeling it. What's your go-to move? You're sitting one-on-one with a kid and they're just saying, absolutely not. What actually helps them? What helps you as an educator help a kid persist through that moment?
Well, starting with something that I mentioned before, um, consistency is important, and consistency is better than intensity. So sometimes your students are not don't feel very motivated to read, so it's better not to put so much pressure on the class, just giving them the opportunity to read maybe short passages, small things, as long as you still have consistency. Another thing that I usually do, and it happens most of the time in my class, is that we have a reading time for the lesson, and I have like three different things to do. The first paragraph that we read, I read it, and I'm very like, it's like very artistic. So I start like acting a little bit, and I change my voice, and this is the story about. So I'm just trying to catch my class attention, you know. The second paragraph is like they are going to read quietly, and the last one, I will look for a volunteer to read it for the whole class. So as you see, we have like three different stages, and we're having consistency, but at the same time, it's not overwhelming. It's not like, oh my God, I have to read all these three paragraphs. The first one will be read by the teacher, and the teacher is a little crazy, and he likes acting and changing his voice. The second paragraph, they're going to read it quietly. So the classroom is going to be very quiet, and they have the opportunity to practice their reading skills, because at some point, especially when they have to do exams, they are by themselves, they are alone, the teacher is not there. So that's a good exercise. And the last one is a volunteer reading for the whole class. So it's very like smooth, to read the 3 paragraph. So that's a very good strategy that we always use, but it's really good and a very strong thing to do with a class that maybe is not so motivated and is a little tired at the moment. Mhm.
Those after lunch classes are brutal. All right, we have a few minutes left. And so I want to bring up a question that we got from someone in the chat that I think is really interesting. And I'd love for both of you, as you are motivated, to respond. So we talked a little bit about kids choosing books that they might be considered low, below grade level or too young for them, or not at their reading level. What do you think that they're actually responding to? Do you think it's the topic, the look of the book, something else? Does it matter? So curious your perspective on that.
Okay, so the situation that you're describing is like a child who has a low reading level and he wants to pick a book that is too high, right?
Other way.
The other
Other
way.
way. So when a kid is has a reading level that might be, let's say they're a second grader or a second grader and they're on grade level, their reading level, but they're choosing a book that might be more appropriate for a kindergartner, from a reading level standpoint. So they're picking something that might be lower, than what they can actually read.
So in my opinion, it depends on how low the level is. So in some cases, as the strategy that I mentioned before, you can offer or you can provide the student with challenges related to the book that the student decided to read. Like summary conversations using this high level vocabulary, or now that you already read about these animals in this small with these short sentences, so now we are going to look for another book that could be higher to align with the other book, because most of the time the reason why the student decided to choose that book is because the student likes that topic. Yeah. So if you can, after giving the opportunity to read it, if you can offer a book that has the same topic with a higher level, so I'm sure that the student will feel motivated to read it. If the case is that the book is too low, in my opinion, I think we need to remind the student the reading goals that we have in the class. Yeah. And maybe have a conversation with the student and let the student know that the teacher cares about his reading progress and that we need to make some changes. Mm-hmm. That's
Awesome.
what
Awesome. Great teacher perspective. I'd love to hear from the parent of three. How does this strike you? Does this question resonate from the parent of the perspective of a parent? What do you think?
I bet it is literally going off of something in it that they love. So was it the cover? Was there a dragon?
Mm.
Like, what are they, what is the big thing that draws them? And probably I would go off of pictures would be the first thing that drew that kid to whatever it is. I don't think that they're going to be sitting there thinking like, oh, this will be super, super easy. Maybe that is something that they think about. But for at least from my perspective, I mean, my kids have picked up books not having any idea what level it would be at just because the pictures look nice.
It's got Spider-Man on the cover.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
I'm sold. Well, thank you all so, so, so much for this conversation. I feel like this is the exact conversation I was hoping that we would have. What I keep coming back to as I reflect on the conversation and our work here at Book Trust is how much this work is about trust and agency. We heard a lot about consistency and scaffolding, meeting kids where they're at. Making sure that we're trusting kids to know what they want to read, giving them the power to choose it, and building the right supports around them so that reading experience feels possible and showing up repeatedly, consistently, so that becomes something they can really count on. And I think when kids have that kind of like ownership, that structure, that predictability of reading as part of the culture of their lives, it sounds like from your all's experience, something can really shift. And I think that's, at Book Trust, certainly what we're fighting for. Um, so I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't plug a few things that we have going on here at Book Trust. If you want to play a role in making that possible for more kids, our spring campaign opens this week. And it'll run through April 10th. And every gift helps us, no matter, if it's $1 or if it's $100, whatever you got helps us, create more joyful reading experiences for kids who benefit from them most. Please follow us on the socials. We're on there. Share what we're doing, amplify. We'll take your social capital if financial capital is not possible right now. Join our mailing list. And you can stay in the loop as we work towards this 5 million milestone. So thank you all so much for being there. Thanks for our lovely panelists for giving us a little look into their lives and how reading engagement shows up for them. So thank you all so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.